Koalas. Kangaroos. Curious creatures who carry their young in pouches. Scientists once thought such animals were dropouts in the evolutionary race and could only survive in the isolation of Australia. But recent discoveries tell a different story. Bloodthirsty, saber-toothed marsupials made a stand on every continent of the world. Millions of years ago came the attack of the killer kangaroos. Australia has been called the world's great evolutionary laboratory. Isolated from the rest of the continents for millions of years, its native animals have been, biologically speaking, free to travel the road less taken. These extraordinary creatures are the living symbols of Australia. Teddy bear-like koalas, bounding, big-eared kangaroos, slow, docile wombats, and cartoon-inspiring Tasmanian devils. Australia's marsupials have always struck outsiders as quaint, cuddly, and sometimes comical. But the fossil record in Australia is introducing paleontologists to an array of marsupials more diverse and unique than anyone would have imagined. Australia is a tough land for the paleontologists. It lacks the kind of geological forces that wrench up mountains and tear gashes into ancient fossil-laden sediments. For most of this century, the fossil record before 50 million years ago was a virtual blank. Discovered in 1983, the fossil site known as Riverslea in western Queensland would change all that. This unglamorous sheep station would soon produce enough fossils to quadruple Australia's entire paleontological record. For a decade, paleontologist Michael Archer and his colleagues have been reaping a rich scientific harvest from Riverslea. After digging up the limestone sediments, they haul them back to the lab at the University of New South Wales. A good soaking in acid often rewards the paleontologist with a chaotic jumble of ancient jaws, teeth, and other bones of long-gone marsupials. Archer has discovered that many living marsupials have rather fearsome skeletons in the closet.
Here's an assortment of the sorts of things that we're finding in Riverslea about 20 million years ago. It includes all sorts of strange herbivores, carnivores. One of the ones that just blew our mind right in the beginning was a thing that ought to be a representative of one of the gentlest, cutest sort of groups, a kangaroo. This thing, this offense to the senses, was a flesh-eating kangaroo.
Armed with rapier teeth and voracious appetites, the bloodthirsty kangaroos that stalked the plains of Australia millions of years ago are just part of the remarkable evolutionary tale of the marsupials. Today, there are three classes of mammals in the world: placental mammals, marsupials, and monotremes. They differ primarily in how they reproduce. Monotremes lay eggs. Only two types of these strange mammals survive: the spiny anteater and the duck-billed platypus. They are found in the wild only in Australia and New Guinea. Placental mammals like us, and like this pregnant hyena, carry a developing fetus in the womb. 11 days after conception, a baby opossum enters the world. Hairless, underdeveloped, and functionally blind. Within minutes, it will crawl up to its mother's pouch, perhaps the most perilous journey of its life. There it will spend the next 9 to 10 months feeding and growing into a fully developed infant. Remarkable though this birthing process is, biologists have always assumed that the placental way of reproducing is the superior one. The argument has been that because placental babies spend a long time in the womb, they are born better developed. Regardless of the zoological debate, the distribution of mammals in the world today is quite lopsided. Placental mammals dominate everywhere but Australia and New Zealand, all of the continents and the seas as well. Australia and New Zealand, on the other hand, belong to the marsupials. Aside from a handful of newcomers, Australia has a remarkable lack of placental mammals. But it wasn't always so. Marsupial fossils have been found on just about every continent in the world. Why did the marsupials thrive in Australia and die out just about everywhere else? Scientists have long held that on the continents where marsupials competed head-to-head with placentals, the placentals won out. On the island continent, where there were no placentals, the marsupials were granted a reprieve.
In fact, the usual idea, it goes back to Matthew, a chap in the United States, is that marsupials came here because they were forced out of the northern lands as inferior mammals and forced into the corners of the world that the placentals didn't want.
The notion that marsupials are somehow inferior is deeply rooted in traditional biology. Zoology texts commonly refer to them as primitive. Even their technical names reveal a bit of placental condescension, according to zoologist Bruce Brewer.
The marsupials are members of the Metatheria, which means animals that are almost good beasts. And then we, the placental mammals, since we made up this terminology, are the Eutheria, or the good beast.
Biologists have had this preconception that because we are placental mammals, that is, we don't have our young in a pouch or anything, that must be the superior type of mammal, and that anything else is somehow an inferior approximation to this placental condition.
If so, how did marsupials manage to reach the safe haven of Australia and survive? According to traditional dogma, they were saved by continental drift during the Eocene, 50 million years ago. They were lucky refugees from an ancient time when all the continents were connected.
They assumed that that was because when Australia broke away from Gondwana about 45 million years ago, only marsupials had managed to get here.
But new fossil discoveries from Riversley are rewriting the natural history of the mammals. A startling find hints that the marsupials may not have fled from their placental cousins, but instead conquered Australia. No one knows exactly where or when the evolutionary rivalry between the marsupial mammals and the placental mammals began.